fermentation is a great way of preserving cucumbers for many months. At home, we would always prepare jars of sour gherkins in the summer in order to consume them over the rest of the year. The exact recipe can be found on the blog. The ingredients list is short: pickling cucumbers, dill flowers, garlic, horseradish root, and a source of tannins. It's best if the cucumbers aren't overgrown, otherwise they tend to fill with liquid. In my case, the source of tannins are oak leaves. I like the particular flavour they impart. It's possible to consider alternative sources or a combination thereof: vine, cherry, blackcurrant, bay or tea leaves, mustard seeds, lemon balm, peppermint and others. It's traditional to just place a few oak leaves in the jar along with the cucumbers, but I have a more interesting solution. I prepare an oak leaf extract. I toss the oak leaves in a pot. Then I pour water over them and set it to boil. It's complicated to tell how many leaves are needed, since tannin content in oak varies across the year, plus the actual tannin extraction is guesswork. Through trial and error, I have found that 4 medium-sized leaves per kilogram of cucumbers, that's about 2 leaves per pound, works fine. After a 10 to 15 minute boil, the extract is rosy brown in colour. I remove it from the heat and set it aside for the time being. I move on to preparing the jar's contents. The cucumbers have been thoroughly washed, but I still need to cut off the ends. Especially the flower end, the brighter one, needs to go since it contains the most pectinase. Pectinase is an enzyme that breaks down pectin, and pectin is what makes cucumbers crunchy. Since I'm going to store the gherkins for many months, I need to do everything in my power to weaken the pectinase effect. Now it's time for dill. If possible, I try to use young green flowers. Depending on the jar size, I use 1 to 3 flowers. I place them on the bottom. Then I add a bit of dried horseradish root. I grab a big clove of garlic. I peel it and crush it, then toss it in the jar too. Finally, I put cucumbers in the jar as tightly as possible. If they're loose, they'll float and mold will appear. I don't know how much brine I'm going to need, so I fill the jars with water. Then I pour the water into a bowl, and I use a kitchen scale to determine how much water there is. Additionally, if the dill sheds petals or seeds, this removes some of them. This reduces the chance of mold appearing on floating bits. I empty the bowl and pour in the oak extract. I usually use all of my extract, but in this instance I'd prepared a bit too much, so I eyeball the required amount. I add salt. I weigh its amount to obtain a solution with a 5% concentration. This means for every 100 grams of brine I use 5 grams of salt and 95 grams of liquid. I use whatever salt I have at hand. Here it's plain iodized table salt. The addition of potassium iodide has no noticeable effect on the end product. I pour a little bit of hot water and stir until all the salt has dissolved. Salt dissolves faster in hot liquids. Finally, I top the brine with cold water. I fill the jars with brine. In order to prevent cucumbers from floating, I use fermentation weights. Finally, I close the jars and that's it. Now I wait. The fermentation starts almost immediately. From several dozen bacterial strains, most are eliminated by the salty environment and the lack of oxygen. Lactic acid bacteria, on the other hand, are anaerobic and can survive considerable salinity. The strain that becomes dominant is Leuconostoc mesenteroides. The bacteria start to digest sugars from the cucumbers, excreting carbon dioxide and lactic acid. After a few days, the concentration of lactic acid is too high for the Leuconostoc, and another strain, more tolerant to low pH, slowly colonizes the environment, Lactobacillus brevis. The last strain to dominate the acidic environment is Lactobacillus plantarum. These bacteria produce so much lactic acid that they effectively end up killing all microbes in the jar. The fermentation signs are visible as early as on day 2. The brine surface starts to foam up, and the brine itself starts to become cloudy, a telltale sign of bacteria multiplying. The acidity is still low, so the cucumbers are vividly green at this stage. A few days later, there's a lot of foam, the brine is cloudy, and a white sediment starts to appear on the bottom of the jar and on the cucumbers. The acidity is high enough to convert chlorophyll into pheophytin, which makes the cucumbers become olive green. After around 2 weeks, the fermentation is finished. The brine is clear again, and there's a lot of white sediment. It's the dead bacteria that have precipitated out of the liquid. Conveniently, I still have a jar of 1-year-old sour gherkins. The gherkins look beautiful. The smell is also perfect. The taste is absolutely amazing. The saltiness isn't really perceivable due to a strong lactic tang, and there's a mild oaky background, enough to be recognizable but without causing astringency. And they're still crunchy.